It was a winter night, and the rain was falling incessantly, creating a curtain of water that obscured Alex's vision as he drove down the country road. The trees seemed to close in on him, and the car's headlights were the only source of light in the darkness. The road was deserted, and the only sound he could hear was the patter of rain on the metal roof of the car. Alex was on his way to his grandparents' house, a trip he made regularly, but tonight was different. His gas tank was almost empty, and he began to worry because there wasn't a gas station in sight for miles. The storm worsened as he progressed down the winding road, and Alex's anxiety increased. He knew that standing still in the torrential rain was risky, and his only hope of refueling was at the gas station that appeared on his GPSA stop he had never made before. Finally, Alex arrived at the scene, and a sense of relief washed over him. The gas station was there, on the side of the deserted road, although it looked abandoned and dilapidated. The rusty, cobweb gas pumps weren't exactly inviting, but Alex had no other option. He got out of the car, cold rain dripping down on him. The wind howled, and the gas station's poor lighting seemed to create grotesque shadows that danced around him. With his cell phone flashlight in hand, he examined the bombs, but there was a problem. The place was deserted, with no attendants or other customers. Looking around, Alex noticed that the door to the convenience store was ajar. He faltered for a moment, but the need for fuel pushed him in that direction. As he pushed open the rusty door, a sharp creak resounded in the rainy night. Alex was inside the convenience store, and a wave of shivers ran down his spine. The dusty shelves and long-forgotten products testified that the place had been abandoned for years. He grabbed a bag of cookies and a bottle of water, figuring he could pay later, even though the place seemed deserted. As he examined the aged wares, he realized he was alone in the store, and the silence was almost deafening except for the rain outside. Deciding to hurry, Alex headed to the payment counter, but no one was there to take payment. The store's back door creaked softly in the night breeze, revealing a path that led into the darkness outside. A sense of restlessness overcame him, but his need for fuel compelled him to venture into the dark in search of someone who could help him. As he moved through the back area, his cell phone's flashlight illuminated rows of empty shelves and dusty boxes. Drops of water dripped from the ceiling, creating a constant sound that made him even more uneasy. Suddenly, he heard a sound. It was a slow, heavy shuffling, as if someone or something was moving in the shadows. The flashlight on his cell phone shook in his hands as he turned toward the sound. Alex's heart raced, and he fought to remain calm as he watched an enigmatic figure crawl towards him. The figure that was crawling towards Alex was hooded, with a soaked cloak that hid his face. Drops of rain ran down the hood, and the figure appeared soaked to the bone. Her movements were clumsy and slow, as if she were injured or in pain. Alex could feel his heart beating wildly as he tried to comprehend the situation. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaky and full of anxiety. The hooded figure did not respond. Instead, it continued to crawl towards Alex, moving unnaturally. It was as if she was fighting against invisible resistance, as if the air itself was pushing against her. The cell phone's flashlight shook in his hands as he illuminated the figure. Drops of rain reflected the light, creating an almost supernatural effect. Alex's eyes were fixed on the enigmatic figure, trying to understand what was happening. Taking a step back, Alex tried to create distance between himself and the hooded figure. His heart continued to pound, and a feeling of fear enveloped him. The figure seemed so out of place in that abandoned store, as if it were an apparition from another world. "Please help me," the figure whispered, his voice weak and shaky. Need help. Alex stood frozen for a moment, trying to decide what to do. He wanted to help, but the situation was so strange and terrifying that he didn't know where to start. He thought about calling the police, but there was no cell phone signal in that remote area. "What happened? How can I help?" he asked, his voice still filled with anxiety. The hooded figure extended a trembling hand towards him. Alex hesitated for a moment, but finally approached, extending his hand to help the mysterious figure to his feet. When his fingers touched the figure's hand, an electric current coursed through his body, and he felt a sense of panic. With a swift movement, the hooded figure pulled him close, its empty eyes staring back at him. Alex felt trapped, unable to move. The hooded figure began to mumble unintelligible words, and the fear inside Alex grew. In a moment of desperation, he managed to free himself and backed away, running towards the exit of the convenience store. The hooded figure followed him, but its speed was strangely limited, as if it was struggling to move. Alex managed to leave the store and get back to his car, his breathing ragged. He sped down the dark road, determined to leave that sinister gas station behind. However, when he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw the hooded figure standing at the entrance of the abandoned gas station, staring in Alex's direction. His empty eyes seemed to follow him, and fear overwhelmed him. He knew that night at the gas station had changed his life forever. The hooded figure was a terrifying enigma he could not comprehend, and the dark encounter left deep scars in his mind. Alex drove through the dark night, praying the hooded figure would never find him again. But he knew that that encounter had triggered a series of events that he could no longer control, and that the enigmatic figure would remain in his memory like a real nightmare. Since the terrifying encounter at that abandoned gas station, Alex has barely been able to sleep. Nightmares about the hooded figure tormented him every night. He felt like a dark presence was hovering around his life, watching him from the shadows. Alex tried to ignore what had happened, telling himself it was just a strange, unexplainable encounter. However, his mind was obsessed with the hooded figure. He began searching the internet, looking for any clue or story that resembled what he had experienced. But nothing came of it, and he felt increasingly isolated in his experience. On a particularly rainy night, the electricity failed in his house. Alex lit candles to illuminate the room, but the darkness seemed thicker than ever. That's when he heard a sound outside. His heart began to beat wildly as he approached the window. The hooded figure was standing outside, standing in the rain, as if waiting for him. His clothes were soaked, and his empty eyes seemed to penetrate Alex's soul. A chill ran down his spine as he stared at the hooded figure. He could feel that this was not human, that something supernatural was happening. Alex backed away from the window and ran to the back door, determined to confront the enigmatic figure. When he stepped out into the rain, the hooded figure didn't move. Instead, she whispered unintelligible words, a chilling sound that echoed in the darkness. Alex was about to speak when the figure raised a shaking hand and pointed at him. The world seemed to spin around Alex, and he found himself in an entirely different place. I was in a dark forest, the night was deep, and the rain fell incessantly. The trees seemed to close in on him, and the hooded figure was standing, watching him. He tried to speak, but no words left his lips. The figure whispered more unintelligible words, and the forest seemed to come to life. Dark shadows danced among the trees, and Alex felt an oppressive presence. The hooded figure approached slowly, his hand extended towards him. Alex could feel the paralyzing fear, but he was completely powerless. The hooded figure touched his forehead, and a shiver ran through his body. Suddenly, Alex was back in his house. The electricity had returned, and the hooded figure was gone. He was soaked and shaking, with a feeling that something terrible had happened. The obsession with the hooded figure intensified. He began to delve deeply into the supernatural, looking for answers to what had happened to him. Each night, he felt the dark presence surrounding him, and the hooded figure appeared in his nightmares with incomprehensible messages. One day, while researching in his local library, he came across an old book about rituals and supernatural entities. In its pages, he found an illustration that made him stop dead in his tracks. It was the hooded figure, described as an entity that wandered between worlds, seeking souls to torment. She was known as the Keeper of Nightmares. Now, Alex was determined to find out how to free himself from this dark obsession. He needed to understand what the hooded figure wanted and how to break the cycle of terror that had enveloped him. If he failed, his own sanity would be at risk, and the Keeper of Nightmares would drag him into the depths of eternal terror. Alex's quest to understand the hooded figure, the Guardian of Nightmares, has led him down a dangerous path. He delved deeply into the rituals and legends surrounding this dark entity, searching for a way to break the terrifying bond that had formed between them. However, the more he researched, the more he realized he was getting dangerously close to the world of the unknown. The rituals and spells he encountered were ancient and mysterious, with unpredictable consequences. He knew he was playing with forces he didn't fully understand, but he was willing to do anything to free himself from the Keeper of Nightmares. One stormy night, Alex found himself at a crossroads. He had discovered a ritual that would supposedly allow him to confront the hooded figure and end the cycle of terror. The ritual involved a remote location in the forest, at the exact point where he had last met with the Guardian of Nightmares. Determined to put an end to his torment, Alex followed the ritual's instructions. He prepared himself with candles, mystical symbols, and a pentagram drawn on the floor. The night was dark and rainy, creating a perfect setting for the imminent confrontation. As Alex began to recite the words of the ritual, the wind howled, and the trees in the forest seemed to whisper ancient secrets. A sense of apprehension enveloped him as the mystical words flowed from his lips. He was about to face the Guardian of Nightmares. Suddenly, the hooded figure emerged from the darkness, exactly as he had seen it before. Her empty eyes stared at Alex as she whispered dark, unintelligible words. The air around them seemed electrified, and the rain fell incessantly. Alex stood his ground, determined to face the Guardian of Nightmares. He recited the final words of the ritual, and the hooded figure began to tremble. Her form seemed to blur and disappear, as if she were being dragged somewhere else. A high-pitched, anguished scream echoed through the forest, and the hooded figure disappeared completely. The rain eased, and the wind stopped howling. The feeling of apprehension dissipated, and Alex found himself alone in the darkness of the forest. He knew he had managed to confront the Keeper of Nightmares and break the cycle of terror that had tormented him for so long. However, he also knew that he had not returned unscathed. The hooded figure had left its mark on his mind, and the memories of those dark encounters would remain with him forever. As Alex returned to his normal life, he looked up at the night sky, grateful to finally be free from the Keeper of Nightmares. But he also knew that the supernatural was real, and that the unknown still hid many secrets. His journey had changed him forever, and he couldn't ignore the feeling that the dark world was always lurking in the depths of the night.